Washington.
So the Saudi hosts and President Trump hope those kind of issues aren't going to surface anywhere on this agenda, but there is one issue upon which they agree, at least in terms of the kind of language we'll hear coming out of Saudi Arabia and also the next leg, which is Jerusalem. Very strong condemnation of Iran and what these countries see as its aggressive actions across the region, destabilizing actions. Coincidentally, of course, Iran has just re-elected its reformist president, Hassan Rouhani. So in the Middle East this weekend, two very important events here in Riyadh and in Iran that will shape the future of Iran in this region. Let's just take a look at these relationships. We're joined from Washington by Ali Shihabi, who's the executive director of the Arabiya Foundation. He's a Saudi. Welcome, Ali Shihabi.
Thank you.
And welcome also to Karim Sajidpour, an Iranian expert from the Carnegie Endowment. Welcome to you as well, Karim Sajidpour.
Thank you, Liz.
Ali, you're sitting in Washington. Why do you think Saudi Arabia has claimed this prize of being the first stop on President Trump's first foreign visit? What was it about this relationship?
Well, I think it shows the centrality of the relationship, the enormous importance that Saudi Arabia has for America's interest in the Middle East, the need to work closely with Saudi Arabia to fight terrorism and to deter Iran. And I think the gentlemen around the president, his advisors, the Secretary of Defense, his National Security Advisor, his Secretary of State, are all strong believers in that. And so that's really what has pushed the tremendous symbolism of this trip, because this is a very symbolic trip for a president who, had a lot of rhetoric on the campaign that caused a lot of people concern. But the fact that he's making this tremendous gesture and coming to Riyadh now and also addressing, the Muslim world and Muslim leaders, I think is a tremendous achievement for Saudi Arabia and shows that this relationship is very strong and very enduring.
What do you think, Karim Sajidpour? Do you think this is causing worry in Tehran?
Well, I think the U.S.-Saudi reset in some ways is more natural equilibrium in the Iran-U.S.-Saudi triangle. For 3.5 decades, U.S. policy in the Persian Gulf was cooperation with Saudi Arabia and containment and / confrontation with Iran. The Obama administration tried to pursue a different approach to engage with Iran and bring about rapprochement with Iran, which was ultimately not successful. So I think the Trump administration in many ways is going back to a traditional U.S. policy toward the Persian Gulf.
But Karim, what is likely to be the reaction of Iran, and in particular the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, which seems to be the force leading Iranian policy across the region, if there are, as we expect, more sanctions against Iran? What would be, and possibly other actions, how would Iran respond?
Well, Liz, as you know, Iranian foreign policy in the Middle East has been remarkably consistent for the last 4 decades. There's essentially been 3 pillars, which have been hostility towards the United States, the rejection of Israel's existence, and the rivalry with Saudi Arabia, which has really intensified. So I don't think that is going to change. Trump's policies toward Iran will change these strategic pillars, but if there is more confrontation between America and Iran in the Middle East, whether that's in Syria and Yemen, it could indirectly help to unravel the nuclear deal, which would be a real national security concern for not only the United States, but also the U.S. partners in signing the nuclear deal, Europe, Russia, and China.
And Ali Shihabi, I have to say that talking to very senior Saudi officials, you have to say that Saudi Arabia is obsessed about Iran and its engagement across this region. But it's not clear that even the neighboring states in the Persian Gulf would be ready to put the kind of pressure on Iran that Saudi Arabia wants to do. What's your assessment?
Well, I think, look, Saudi Arabia sees it as an existential battle. This is not a normal rivalry. Saudi Arabia is a status quo power and Iran is a revolutionary power. And Saudi Arabia sees Iran as wanting to bring down the ruling order in the Gulf. Despite all the, moderate noises that they make in English, but the supreme leader and the Revolutionary Guard who really run Iran, irrespective of, frankly, all the elections that they put together, the Iranian regime has been a revolutionary regime talking about taking down the Saudi monarchy for the last 40 years. So, and I think a lot of the Gulf nations share that. You know, obviously they're closer to Iran and they feel more vulnerable, so they have to be more careful. But I think there was a consensus among the Gulf states that it is an existential battle with this Iranian regime. And so the fact that this administration sees it the way that Saudi Arabia sees it is extremely reassuring.
And just a very brief answer from both of you, starting with you, Ali Shihabi. What is the risk of a confrontation? There'll be strong language, but is there the risk of more than that?
You know, when America's strong and America shows its deterrence, I think the risk of confrontation comes down because it pushes the regime in Iran back into its box. But unfortunately, under the Obama days, the risk actually went up because, you know, they took their eye off the ball as far as we were concerned. So I think the risk of confrontation has gone down a bit.
Karim Sajidpour?
Well, I think that on one hand, certainly the Iranian population doesn't want conflict, and the American population, after a decade and a half in the Middle East, doesn't want conflict. But there are so many theaters of potential conflict in the Middle East that this is something we have to watch very, very closely, because even if neither side wants a conflict, we may be indirectly heading there.
Karim Sajidpour of the Carnegie Endowment, Ali Shihabi of the Arabiya Foundation, thank you to both of you for joining us with your assessments all the way from Washington. But those kind of assessments resonate right across the region. And this moment in Riyadh, it is a decisive moment. It is nothing less than a turning point. President Trump has come here not just for a bilateral summit with the Saudi rulers. He's meeting the leaders of the Gulf Cooperation Council, 6 neighbors of Saudi Arabia, and also dozens of kings, presidents, and prime ministers from across the Arab and Islamic